Works well enough? Okay, thanks. I just saw the tweets about the logo, so I'll try to make it short, so not too many jokes. But I saw that, and then I thought about this. I'm just adding to the confusion. Sorry about that, Tony. But I'm going to talk about the romantic adventures of a pink bunny. Sorry for adding to the confusion. More correctly, I'm going to talk about Akoma Ntoso and how to restrict Akoma Ntoso using Schematron. So briefly about the context. Okay, this is all screenshots, so I hope it's enough detail so you can follow along. But the context is the legislation and parliamentary reports publication of the Swiss federal government. So that's the context. And what you see here is a law published. We did the HTML from the original docx, Microsoft Word files that are used to make a fine PDF, which has been the official publication format for the laws in Switzerland. And starting the 1st of June, so this is rather new. Last week, there is an ordinance saying that the Swiss official publications also need to be in a machine-readable format. There was little debate of what the machine-readable format mandated would be. It would be XML, and it would be Akoma Ntoso. So in comes Akoma Ntoso. Shortly, I think it was pretty obvious. It's an OASIS standard working on exchange of legislation documents. And so there is this initiative, legal XML or legal ML at OASIS. There is the legal document, which is then about the format for the documents. There's also stuff about rulings, and I'm not going to delve too much into this. We're talking about Akoma Ntoso as being accepted the XML schema or the XML vocabulary for legislative documents and parliamentary reports. Anything official. It's a very broad. Let's show some XML. I hope it has visible detail. This is the act in Akoma Ntoso, and Akoma Ntoso is a very, very flexible format because so that's why we are talking about this in a Schematron user meeting. It's a very flexible schema because of the international span of all the different legislations, or at least the ambition. So what you see here is there is this chapter, so it's just a snippet. I put some red arrows there. It's not even clear for me, sorry. I put some red arrows there just to show in a chapter, in what we legally call a chapter in Switzerland, is there's articles, but there can also be sections. So here's the flexibility of value. And in Swiss legislation, or at least in the federal Swiss legislation, the leaf of at least an identifiable piece of a legal legislation hierarchy is the article. And the article has paragraphs, and the paragraphs are the thing where we allow real textual content. All the rest is hierarchical containers and titles. The interesting twist here is that we're having similar discussions about doing this for the canton of Zurich, which is like 50, I don't live in Switzerland, 50 to 100 kilometer max from Bern. There they have paragraphs with articles in there. So already there's a difference in hierarchy, semantic hierarchical meaning of the concept. So, okay, Akoma Ntoso has been very, very valuable for us. but we cannot allow subchapters to have chapters, and then subsections have chapters, and then have sections again. So we want to restrict that. And Akoma Ntoso has a wrong button. Akoma Ntoso has a mechanism for that. This is a screenshot from a presentation Monica Palmirani and Fabio Vitali did 3 years ago at Balissage about customization of Akoma Ntoso. I apologize for not having the family names right immediately. It's a bit, in the Akoma Ntoso community, it's a bit like saying Mohammed and Jirka on this floor. And then everybody knows who you're talking about. There's a lot of hard work from these people. They're the chair of the technical committee of Akoma Ntoso. And if you're watching, Monica or Fabio, thank you. So this paper, it's worth a read. I sent the slides already to Tony, so you can publish, or maybe I can throw on tweet. It's just screenshots, but there are links there. Have read in the paper if you're interested in Akoma Ntoso. It shows mechanisms, and it also shows tools for making this mechanism of restricting Akoma Ntoso for your or customizing it for your local legislation. How to do so. The fun thing is we hired someone for a second opinion, and the first thing this person asked, where's your subschema? Because it's very, very common. The subschema usually in most projects is by using this tool generated from the schema by switching some boxes. And just to show something that's interesting for what I'm going to do next, this is a very, very helpful thing where you can just select. I have the example of the chapter there. I can select that from the entire hierarchy that's allowed inside the chapter. I can just say that, no, all I want is sections and articles at the lower level and nothing above. And to be honest, I don't want textual content in the chapter, and I can have a number and I can have a heading. So when you do that for all the hierarchical components in your Akoma Ntoso act, and then you push the button, just like I do now, and you get a generated subschema. So the section here is the original section. I didn't change that. But the chapter has an extension with an assert, saying that basically from everything you would be able to expect, only the hierarchical components, section and article, are allowed. So this is the generated subschema. So where's the schematron in this story? Wrong button again. I can do the same restriction using schematron. And in a few minutes, I'm going to explain why we decided very, very early on to not go the subschema way, changing the schema as it was, but choosing schematron for this. It's fairly obvious. It's just the, please look at this. If you really want to see schematron and tags, this is this, no, there's another one, but this basically is 1 out of 2 where you see schematron code. So I'm just restricting the chapter into being either a section or a well, there's more to it than in the previous example, but there's an article and section in there. And you may note that in order to have a certain level of compliance with Akoma Ntoso, you should use identifiers on the parts. We decided to only have identifiers on the parts that we do need for legal analysis. So I'm actually putting assert statements in there. The identification is optional, and I make it mandatory, not by setting the switch on the subschema generator, but by having a test that we need this identifier. Okay. Talking about If you do customization, you do restriction and maybe extension. I have this example to talk about a very interesting feature of Akoma Ntoso. It's the metadata. It's very much grounded. Well, it uses Ferber, and it's very much grounded into semantic technologies. So I can be very, very precise. There is a Ferber date on this manifestation. I want this Ferber date to be an into force date, but not just something that everyone understands as being an into force date, but as the into force date we define in the ontology. So I make a reference. There's an itchy thing about it. I can be very precise about what, if I say this is an XML document, what do I mean with an XML document? It's an XML document as we define it in the ontology, a user format XML, and the label is it's Akoma Ntoso. That gives us the option to move away from it in next versions and have a Akoma Ntoso for Swiss version 4 or whatever. But the refers to attribute was not allowed on the Ferber date. It's a bit a weird example because I got a message from the technical committee that they will add the refers to on the next iteration of the standard. But for now, I did not want to change, as per their suggestion, the schema, but I just added one. So I can add fedlex namespace attributes everywhere. But I want to, my extension actually is a, almost done. My extension actually is a restriction of the full extensibility of the foreign namespace attributes by saying if you're using the fedlex, if you're using attributes in the fedlex namespace, make sure that they're only allowed on a Ferber date element, and the local name needs to be referred to. There's a lot to say about the quality of the schematron. We did the schematron to basically enable ourselves. We're very ambitious with the schematron, so the quality will improve. Right now, it's just a convenience hack. So why bother in the first place? I have two bulleted slides. This is one of them. Quality assurance. The background of this is that we started 2 years ago with analyzing the Word documents they have on reports, on legislation, on consolidated legislation, and we were building transformers. But you analyze a couple hundred documents, then you analyze a couple of thousand documents, then you go into production and you transform 15,000 and bugs appear. So being very clear about a whole set of quality rules in a schematron, we managed to fix quite some issues in the transformer, and we managed to learn things. Like out of sort of 15,000 documents, we found one document that our top level, if it's there, it can be a book. But we can never have a title with a book inside, except in one document that was an ancient document coming from some treaty. So Schematron told us, like, oh, here you have a book inside the title, and not the title inside the book. And so we had to change the Schematron, simply because this one document was valid with a book inside the title. Title not being a heading, but being a legislation container. So our schema evolved, or subschema in Schematron evolved as we continued. Where are we going to use this in future? Well, currently it's mainly as a quality assurance for the transformation, both being the batch and the production transformation of new documents. But we want to put the Schematron as part of a documentation of our subschema in, well, we have to publish it, what's exactly in there. And we want it to be an enabler also for the authoring. Give it 3-4 years, and we might not have to transform everything from the docx continuously. We might go for an XML-only workflow. or an XML all workflow. Okay. I was tempted to mention the fact that I described the project and some of the issues we had with all the transformation at Balisage last year. I did a presentation. I have not yet, for, let's say, reasons of physical inconveniences related to the intersect between me aging and me doing stupid things in the mountains. It's not yet there. The abstract is there. Achim warned me about Chinese democracy, and I quote, Chinese democracy languished in development hell for 8 years. It's about XProg 3, the paper. In 8 years, it would be about XProg 5, so it's not going to take 8 years. But now we're there. I want to point out that you still have a week to enter a late-breaking submission for Balisage. Last slide. Why Schematron as a subschema? I'm preaching to the choir now, I think. Flexibility. We did find that the declarative nature allowed us to make changes and still keep things robust. And I basically wanted to tear apart the fact that there is a OASIS standard, and we're doing a customization of that standard, and we wanted to keep that in 2 different layers so they can evolve and we can evolve without having to take care about or to think too much about what the others are doing. And multilingual, Switzerland, well, we're publishing in 5 languages, and the authors at least speak 3 languages. So yes, it's like a feature from Schematron that's going to help us a lot. Basically, that's it. Thank you for your attention. Just mentioning, well, the company I'm working with to do this, and the Swiss government that allowed me to talk about it. Thank you. I would suggest, David, that we don't do questions and that we allow Michael to take some time. If anyone wants to talk to me about this, I will be around.